pack of scary, indestructible alpha dogs. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And you're Rix, you're King, you're Duke, and you're Boss. And I'm Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Isle of Dogs.
Isle of Doggos.
Also, if you just pronounce it fast, it's I Love Dogs.
I love dogs.
I love dogs.
Was that a movie?
It is. We're going to talk about it.
What was the movie with Paul Rudd and dogs and...
Must Love Dogs.
Must Love Dogs.
That's a different film.
Can we do that movie?
Sure.
I love dogs.
You want to do it instead? Let's ask our guest if they'd rather do that instead. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us in the studio the wonderful New York-based television and film animator, Mr. Patrick Hosmer.
Hello.
How are you, buddy?
Do you prefer Hos or Hosmer?
Good. Hosmer?
Yeah.
Hos?
Hos.
Either way.
Patrick, P-Dog.
P-Dog, yeah.
I take it all.
Would you rather review, it's up to you, would you rather review Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs or the Paul Rudd vehicle?
Yeah, I think it was the Paul Rudd vehicle.
Must
John
Love Dogs?
Cusack. Let's
It's John Cusack. There we go. See?
set the record straight here.
So I guess, real quick, review that movie.
I would do that movie.
Yeah.
You do that movie?
If we could take a couple hours and watch it real quick.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
let's just change the format.
Welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you on. You and I have both worked with you a couple of times in the past. Probably, I think, most recognizably on the Guy Code franchise, which I think you were the mastermind behind the entire look and feel of MTV's
Art
Guy Code.
director.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
You'll take credit for it.
I'll take it.
Yeah, you'll take it. All right. Quick question. We just did an episode on desert island movies, just to kind of get us like in the ballpark here. What do you think on the spot, hot seat right now, would be your desert island movie? And is it Must Love Dogs?
Must Love Dogs would be number 2.
Right.
Probably number 3. Let me think. Disney's Robin Hood. No.
Really?
Scratch it.
Ooh.
Okay. Take it back.
Mystery Alaska.
Another dog movie?
Oh, does that have to be a dog movie?
No, it doesn't have to be
a dog movie.
No.
Is this true?
It's a hockey movie.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm thinking of the Iditarod film. I'm all over the map here. John Cusack is Paul Rudd. Dogs are in Alaska. I don't
Living
know.
together, mass hysteria.
Mystery Alaska would be your film.
I love Mystery Alaska.
Right.
I could watch it over and over again.
Oh, is it better than the Mighty Ducks?
I don't think so because it's not a good movie. Like Mystery Alaska is a bad movie, but it's so fun to watch.
I think that was a kind of a thing that happened in that episode where we kind of got into a situation where we were talking about, do our desert island movies have to be good, or do they kind of have to be guilty pleasure movies?
Absolutely, they don't have to be good.
They don't have to be good.
They're probably better if they're bad.
Right.
Yeah, it has to be something that you
Derive pleasure from?
Yeah, but they could be good. But they don't have to be the universal. I'm using air quotes. Good.
Yeah.
Isn't that the beauty of a desert island hypothetical? Though it's like free of context. Free of context. It's all about pleasure.
And you don't have to justify it to anybody.
You can't say this is a good film to a palm tree. It's like you're just like
Yeah.
good film doesn't matter.
I would take that. I would take that. Well, if you'd like to write in us to tell us your desert island movies, it's kind of been a theme. We're going to read some later on in the show along with our other emails. You can email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or get in touch with us on Twitter at onlymoviepod. You can also leave us reviews, good old reviews. Remember those? Those are the best. At iTunes, please give us 5 stars if you can spare them. We know stars are hard to come by these days. Also, you can check out our Facebook page if you have not jumped off that particular ship. Isle of Dogs, boys.
This is our second Wes Anderson film on the podcast. We went back and did The Life Aquatic as a request a few. Was it last year we did that? I can't even remember. Time is going by so fast now. And so I think just as a quick recap, I'm a big Wes Anderson fan. You can go back and listen to that episode to see what I think about Wes Anderson. I'm a lifelong Wes Anderson fan. Saw Rushmore at a really formative time in my life.
Yes.
Kind of, it made a really deep impression to the point where last week he was actually in New York presenting a movie, which I went along to see. No, he was, but he was also introducing Akira Kurosawa's Stray Dogs at the Metrograph in New York, which is a fantastic theater, by the way.
That's very meta.
I'm going there tomorrow.
Are you?
We're seeing that tomorrow.
Peter Pan, I think.
Which Peter Pan are you seeing? There's so many.
The original Disney one.
Oh, really? The cartoon?
The cartoon, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Which is
cool.
another one of my desert island movies.
There you go. Well, I'm Haas. I'm curious what you think because we know. And Matt, where were you on Wes Anderson?
I like him. At least I thought I did.
Oh.
We've talked about this.
Whoa.
We'll get into it a little bit.
Spoiler alert.
Let's do this. I don't not like him.
Okay.
And I've really enjoyed Royal Tenenbaums is my jam.
Okay.
But I'm also terrified to rewatch Royal Tenenbaums because
I actually just watched it 2 nights ago.
I know what you mean, though.
I want it to still be my jam.
It's good. It's very good.
Good. That's good enough for me. I can't say. I can't say a bad thing about him or his style. I can only say that it is increasingly, and I'll talk about this a little more, less effective on me as time goes on.
Okay. How about
I
you?
think that's fair. I also love Wes Anderson films, movies. I like him a lot. Rushmore changed me in a big way when I saw it as well. We're probably all the same age. I don't love all of his movies.
Yeah.
But I do love things about all of his movies.
Right.
And I probably like most of his movies.
Are you kind of in the situation where you would go to see every one of his movies if it comes out?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, just by brand name alone, the Wes Anderson brand, you would go check out what that is. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Just to kind of like acclimatize us and see where we're at on the Wes Anderson train, because the Wes Anderson train kind of derails quite a lot, as it turns out. And I
is that due to the Darjeeling Limited or whatever?
It actually was. It was.
Yes.
I think it was around the Darjeeling Limited that people started getting. I think the term, hipster and twee kind of get tossed around a little bit with Wes Anderson, and I was sort of surprised by how much people started resenting his very specific style of filmmaking, and it started happening around the Darjeeling.
I have a theory.
Okay.
And it might be why I am. Wait, what do you got?
No, I have a theory too, but
okay. Do you want to do your theory first?
No, you go first.
Okay.
This is the Wes Anderson Theory podcast.
My theory is twofold. The minor part of it is that Wes Anderson has had the same style for so long that everyone sort of knows it, and now it's become not so much quirky, but almost like an institution. And by that, I mean, he does it and he still does it the best, but there's still other films and other filmmakers that throughout his tenure as a director and as sort of a force in this industry are sort of seeping bits and pieces of it off of it and putting it into their own work. Like, it's almost like he's the source of a power. Let's just use that analogy. And other people are tapping it and using it a little bit here and there, not going full Anderson. No one can go full Anderson but Wes Anderson.
Maybe Paul Thomas Anderson. Yeah.
That's a
or
different
Louis
Anderson.
Anderson.
Louis Anderson.
Or Paul W.S. Anderson.
Or Mr. Anderson.
Pamela Anderson.
Pamela okay,
Anderson.
a lot of people can go full. Like 10 people can go full Anderson. But so I think there's a little bit of
Anderson
that.
Cooper.
So,
Sorry. That was such a dumb jump in.
I'm really happy you said it, though.
So I think there's that. But the other thing, too. I don't know why that was so funny.
So dumb.
The other thing, too, is I think I'm experiencing what my fellow film goers experience when they say they are now starting to have superhero fatigue. I feel like I am having Wes Anderson fatigue, because while this film, Isle of Dogs, and we'll get into it, is super interesting on a bunch of levels, the pacing and the way the story is told is the exact same way since Rushmore. Like, the style and the cadence and not style as in artistic style. I'm just talking about like the pace at the way the story is told. There's been reports, weirdly enough, that a lot of people in this movie, not because they don't like it, but because it's just so kind of soothing, have been falling asleep, and they've been getting mad at themselves because they've been falling asleep. I've had 2 friends actually tell me that, and they're like, what the hell? So I think I'm experiencing at least the closest thing when people are like, oh, I'm so sick of superheroes. I'm like, I'm kind of sick of Wes Anderson. Like, even though it's doing neat stuff. Yeah, that's me. What's your theory?
Oh, my theory is the reason that Darjeeling Limited derailed the train, derailed the sort of Wes Anderson momentum is because after seeing Isle of Dogs, I was thinking that like artifice is kind of like his. Yeah, that he traffics in sort of
design,
fantastical, magical things, right? Yeah. And when you think about the settings of all of his movies, they're all non-real places, right? It's like the Tenenbaum house was on like 400 whatever street, or
327th, yeah, something like that. Yeah. I literally just watched it a couple of nights ago.
Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah.
It's on a made up island. Yeah. It's like, I think maybe probably one of its most successful movies is Grand Budapest.
Yeah.
Made up country and a made up culture, right?
Yeah.
And I think when he made Darjeeling Limited, he probably really wanted to make a made up India.
Yeah.
But he knew that he would be immediately get called racist for making up an Indian country.
Right.
So he had to make it real, and it completely fell flat.
Interesting.
And I think Isle of Dogs has a little bit of that problem too.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get to the elephant in the room when it comes to Isle of Dogs in a second.
It's Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, Anderson Cooper is sitting in the room, going full Anderson for some reason. But to me, the thing you point to is the artifice, and I think the thing there is that his early films, Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, Tannenbaums, and even Life. I think Life Aquatic is the point at which aesthetic and design became foregrounded over narrative. And what's happened for me in recent years is I found that his narratives have become almost unnecessarily complex. I think they've become complex because his design has become much more refined and complex, and narrative follows design for him. But there is this thing where, like, Rushmore is a pretty humanist film. It's pretty linear. It's pretty straightforward. Tannenbaums is as well. But around Life Aquatic is when you start seeing like direct-to-camera narration and narratives that jump backwards and forwards in time, flashbacks that kind of intermittently pop up to give us little pieces of information as we go forward. You start seeing that a lot more now. That said, like I'm still on board the train, so to speak. I think, and the reason I'm fully on board the train is Fantastic Mr. Fox. I think Fantastic Mr. Fox is not only one of the best films he's made. It's a later film as well. To the point, it's actually the first film my son watched. We sat down to watch that movie.
What's the second film he's watched?
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah,
because
dork.
I'm that guy. Yeah, he loves the shot of the monkey throwing the bone up into the air and becoming space. He goes, and he seems to think that if he throws a bone into the air, it'll become a space.
Well, because it's the second moving image he's seen on a screen.
Yeah, and he's like, this is what it is. So I'm totally on board. Matt, tell us what Isle of Dogs is about.
Isle of Dogs, as IMDb puts it, is a film that goes like this. Set in Japan, Isle of Dogs follows a boy's odyssey in search of his lost dog.
Great.
Yep.
Cool.
Accurate.
That's not true.
Yep. A little bit more information. Tell us a little bit about Megasaki, the dog exile, the trash island. There's a lot to unpack here, right?
But this film, first and foremost, I mean, let's get to. Do you just want to get into? I want to hear Patrick's first thoughts. That's right. You're on the spot. No dog pun intended.
Yeah.
I'm on the spots. I liked Isle of Dogs. I thought it was good. I had some issues with it. I think at its worst, it's kind of culturally insensitive. I think at its very best, it's a little lazy, actually, in the way, in its treatment of the sort of like the Japanese setting.
Right.
And
I think those two things seem to be the same thing, culturally insensitive and lazy about the setting, right?
Probably, yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Well, cultural insensitivity is like if you're actively against a culture, that's racist. If you're passively, meaning you don't think it's a big deal and being insensitive, I would call that lazy.
yeah. Either way, it's not something that I would think breaks the movie or anything. But for me, and full disclosure, half Japanese. It kind there were points that made it sort of hard to just enjoy and like turn my brain off because there were things that pop up where I was just like, ooh.
As a narrative experience, just following the story of Atari trying to find his dog, and like the story of the Trash Island thing. Did you find it compelling? Did you find it engaging?
Yeah, very much so. In all the ways that we've come to sort of depend on a Wes Anderson movie to do. I mean, I was very like, it was very fun to sort of like go on that journey.
Right.
So like, as far as like a boy looking for his dog and like lots of fun, there's a little airplane, little boats and, all that stuff. Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shahir?
I think I'm actually kind of in a similar position here, which is that for me it's not top tier Anderson. It's not.
He's not going full.
He's not going full Anderson.
He's not going full Anderson.
Yeah, he's going half Anderson on this one. No, I did enjoy the film. I did. I do take delight in the aesthetic pleasures of a Wes Anderson film. I love the sort of sense of design, and I agree. I can see how it can be fatiguing because there's such a sameness to it. But I find that sameness a little bit comforting. I find that sort of of that, and I guess the reason why I can sort of reconcile that same sameness as being okay is that Wes Anderson is the only person that does Wes Anderson movies. No, I don't think any other filmmaker. I've seen filmmakers that have sort of incorporated some elements of a Wes Anderson style into their film, but nobody does Wes Anderson like Wes Anderson does. And there was a period of my life, I think before Fantastic Mr. Fox, where I was kind of like, oh, I wonder what a Wes Anderson horror movie would feel like, or I wonder what, like if he really broke out of this style, what would that be?
Sure.
But I think, like how many, we're what, 8 films deep into the Wes Anderson universe or something like that. And it's like, I don't think he's going to ever break out of the style. But what I like is that he can jump from genre to genre in sort of interesting ways and then reform those genres around what he does. So I find that sort of aesthetic pleasure kind of comforting. I find it enjoyable. I like all the little attention to detail that he does. I like to see all the narrative tricks that he tries to pull in order to make this a film that doesn't have to rely on subtitles, but has is in a foreign language. I kind of like that. I think it's problematic. The thing that I was really, really, really am curious about with this film is how it plays to a Japanese audience when it's translated. So in other words, when if you're in Japan watching this movie, you're obviously going to translate the main characters in, the dogs are going to be now speaking Japanese. What function is the translator going to have? For those just filling in, there's a thing at the beginning of this film where they say all Japanese speakers will be translated by a bilingual interpreter when they're available, as in the movie will actually do a diegetic thing where we will see that character on screen translating what's happening.
And that's normally like news things, like
So you'll see, you'll see a press conference, and and the film will, instead of watching the press conference, will pan away to the translator so we can hear what's happening. What I'm really curious about is what happens in a Japanese version of this movie. Like what it's almost like you need to remove that element almost entirely, and a different version of this movie needs to exist. So I'm really curious. That was my first question: is like, how does this play to a Japanese audience in Japan watching this film?
Hot take, not well. I don't think it would do that.
Just from the narrative mechanics of
that's
translation.
what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the cultural insensitivity or any of that jazz. I'm talking about it's going to be weird because the whole reason. Here's why this exercise is good. The barks are translated into English, which is where I've saw it. So let's just go with an American sort of viewing experience of this film, or an English speaker's viewing of this film. The reason why the exercise of having one group be the language that is the audience that is watching it and one group speak a different language that probably most of the audience doesn't understand is to make you empathize with the group that you understand the language and be comfortable going with them on their journey. That's why it's so interesting. Like you always go with the dogs, and you're with the dogs because dogs are dogs, but also it keeps you narratively on board with their story. And it's a very quick shorthand to be like, yes, people I don't understand are doing shady things where, now I'm back to the dogs barking. Like, I understand them. I understand the dogs. Yay. So like there's that exercise is a very interesting way of getting you involved with your main characters. I think when you put it in practice and it's not like a fake language of a fake culture that you're sort of like using instead, and you're using Japanese, that gets interesting and dicey. And at first I was like, okay, I think the connection is worth it, but it also was like, okay, well, maybe you could do it so the dogs don't understand humans, and they play with that a little bit in the beginning. That there's some miscommunication, but then by the end of the movie, and this isn't a spoiler really, but the interaction between especially Atari and the dogs, and sometimes the other characters on the island and the dogs, starts to become a little bit too simpatico for me. It starts to become like they just all of a sudden start understanding what the other ones kind of want you to, what they want them to do. And so I'm like, okay, well, they broke that. And then I was like, and then the weirdly enough, the laziest insensitivity to me was that the dogs all had American names written in English on their tags. And that to me broke the entire thing. And because I like the dog names. I like Duke and all that. I had a dog named Duke.
Yeah.
But that kind of was the sort of like taking the keystone out of the archway of this, like, well, maybe I can do the mental gymnastics to make this cultural insensitivity not quite be as meaningful. But when you take that little bit out, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it was like, it's not a super important thing, but it's the linchpin for me that's like, this got real lazy real quick.
Well, in fairness, there are a lot of Japanese dogs that have American names.
Yeah.
My friend who's Japanese had a dog.
You had a Japanese
Potato
dog?
Chip.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, if you own a dog in Japan, I guess it's a Japanese dog, right?
Yeah.
Potato chip.
But I mean, I don't know this off the top of my head. You could have just blown up my entire linchpin thing. Is that a, like, do most dogs in Japan have these simple sort of names? Because if they do, then I could take
I
off
think
back
in
what
the
I said.
world,
That I don't know.
In the world of this film, they do. And I have no, like, the issue that I have in, like, drilling down into that topic is how does that translate when this film is presented to a Japanese audience? So I don't have any problem with the names being Spot, Duke, whatever. Those seem like pretty universal dog names to me. But the question is do their tags in the Japanese version of this film
Get subtitled?
do they? It makes no sense to me for them to get subtitled into the language that the people are actually speaking. What would make more sense is if the tags didn't have English lettering on them and it was actually kanji and was in, like, a Japanese language. And I'm like, so that's where this mental exercise gets interesting for me, is like, and it's the same with the bilingual interpreter is like, how do they deal with that narrative device in the native language of this film? And that's what I think this is a really interesting exercise that I'm sort of on board with. I don't agree that it all entirely works. I kind of found the only thing here is I think the sort of the push to jump to, like, cultural insensitivity and like him being kind of naive in his approach, I think is just a symptom of the time we live in now.
Well,
where, like, we're just in this world now where cultural appropriation is a term that is more commonly used. We understand what it means now, and we're just in a different place than this film would have been, like, 5 to 10 years ago. Probably even when they started making the film, which was probably 2 to 3 years ago.
You're saying it would have been less a bigger problem 5-10 years ago?
No, I'm saying I think we are quick to call it out now because we understand because the vernacular of cultural criticism now understands cultural appropriation in a way. We're also moving closer towards, like, a globalized society. So
I also, I also don't think it's technically, what he's doing is not technically a cultural appropriation. Because he's not really doing anything with the culture itself. He's just using it as a way to distance you from the villains.
Yeah, he's othering Japanese people.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I kind of stopped short of agreeing with people when they're like, it's an homage. It's not like, it's like, it's not really an homage.
It's
I don't
really
think
not.
because the dogs are all white male voices.
Yeah.
It immediately others everyone else in the movie except for the other white girl.
Right.
Which we can get to Tracy.
That, I think, is a really, that to me is
White savior.
So, for example, if that character didn't exist, then I would just say this is a sort of the fact that they have white Anglo-Saxon voices is just a symptom of the fact that we're watching it in America. But then there is a character voiced by Greta Gerwig who is a foreign exchange student who is taken the revolution, taken to, like, jumping onto this revolution.
I want to talk about that character, but I want to put a pin in it because I feel like we've also just shat on this a lot real quick. Let's talk. Because that's another big problem for me. But I would like to talk about some of the stuff that I did really enjoy.
Sure.
First of all, the animation team on this is I was blown away by I don't even know how I would put it, but, like, it's that pseudo DIY, but definitely way too much to have done. Like, it feels like a DIY, like, to the umpteenth degree. All stop motion, all beautiful. I love the way the dogs obviously look cool, even with the hair sort of, like, blowing at the frame rate that it does, and you get instant personalities from all of the animals, even from the first time you see them, especially even from the Wes Anderson, like, straight on or what's it called, profile shots. The humans, I think, are, I would even say, visually more interesting for me than the dogs. Like, I think that they all have, like, the way, and I want to talk to you about this, Hosmer, in a bit, but, like, the way that they are designed, I instantly knew, like, they give you an emotional reaction as to to how they look, and then the character obviously helps to inform that. But from an art director's perspective, did you take anything sort of away from that? Did you sort of how did you view this purely beyond the story, just sort of like the way the art was telling you something?
I love the way it looked. The people, it's funny. I didn't really think the people stuck out to me that much. I kind of thought it was really funny that they have like kind of like baby Wallace and Gromit mouths.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
very into showing like 2 sets of teeth every time they open their mouth. It was really funny. I thought it was like I think the design of the characters was cool. Like Kobayashi was just like giant.
It was a
monolith.
triangle.
Yeah, inverted triangle.
Kind of giant Dorito shaped guy.
Yeah.
And like Major Domo, who is kind of this like really grotesque character, but like, you know, this like lurch type of guy, you know, just like everyone kind of had their own little thing. It was fun. I don't remember her name, Greta Gerwig with her big afro. That was fun.
I dug the scientist and his assistant Yoko Ono.
Yeah. Played by Yoko Ono.
Played by Yoko Ono. Well, when it first happened, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And then I was like, oh yeah, it's actually played by Yoko Ono.
Yeah. It was kind of like, I was curious about their decision to make her look the way they did, which wasn't really like Yoko Ono at all, right? Or am I wrong?
No, I mean, I didn't really
Maybe
see the
young
resemblance.
Yoko Ono?
Maybe.
Possibly.
I think the design style comes from, I think, Henry Selick, who did Caroline, and he did... what's the other? I've got it up here.
Coraline? Is that
Caroline? Yeah, Caroline. I call it Caroline.
That's okay.
I call Nightmare Before Christmas as well. He was the animation. So it's
they look so different.
Yeah, he's got that sort of naive but beautiful hand animation style, which has that you can see the fingerprints in the models kind of thing. But at the same time, there's this like level of complexity to the models, which is kind of astounding.
Which is, I'm sure, is like right up Wes Anderson's alley, right? I mean, because like he's not a man to hide the way he makes something anyway.
No,
right?
you want to see everything. Henry Selick didn't do this film, but he actually started with Wes Anderson on The Life Aquatic. He did the Tiger Shark in The Life Aquatic, and then he was gonna do Fantastic Mr. Fox, but dropped out. And I think the style has kind of lingered on, and I think this film kind of still borrows from the style that was developed in Fantastic Mr. Fox. So it has that sort of like beautiful naivete to it, but you still kind of see the seams, but at the same time, it's still extraordinarily well crafted. And I like you guys. It's a pure delight to watch. Like to see. There's a thing that I love, and I think it's not to do with the animation style, but it's a Wes Anderson thing. And you guys will both know this because you're animators as well, is that he doesn't use Eazy-E's keyframes. And it's like, when you see a Wes Anderson tracking move go from left to right, it hard stops at the right position. And it's like, and that's kind of part of his aesthetic. It's got this sort of like, it doesn't feel like a mistake in any way. And it's kind of cool because it's unique to what he does, and it's part of the language of his films. So I really dig that.
I do too. Yeah. I mean, there's something very percussive, I think, about the way his movies are, and not to say like loud or anything, but very rhythmic. Right?
Yeah.
And like every scene has like a meter to it. Yeah. Which is like super fun and delightful.
And I think that's what sort of calms people into that maybe on occasion sort of sleepy thing, because you're so comfortable in it. You're like, your brain is probably picking up on a very distinct pattern of the way things are moving. But on a sort of side note to that, I think the score and the music choices in this film were absolutely delightful. That the I Won't Hurt You song is stuck in my head for a very long time. Who did the
Alexander Desplat. He's done a bunch of stuff.
Kingdom, right?
Moonrise, he's done a bunch of stuff. He's been nominated for Oscars. He's been around for a while. His score for Fantastic Mr. Fox is absolutely delightful. He's an incredible composer, and has worked with Anderson a couple of times on at this point as well. So but I agree. There's a kind of rhythm to everything where the camera moves kind of feel in line with the percussion of for example, in this case, the taiko drumming. And then the way characters move in and out of frame is kind of it's all kind of cohesive. That's this thing about Wes Anderson that I find really pleasing and I find really enjoyable, is that there's this sort of insular sense of a fully sealed world that he is putting us through.
Another thing that I really did like is that I feel like the movie itself is almost kind of like a Wes Anderson Easter egg. Have you noticed this? How like a dog always dies in his movies, or like almost always dies?
Oh yeah.
And in this one, you got a lot of dogs, but also Spots. Can we do spoilers?
Sure.
Yeah, we're getting into spoilers.
Yeah. Spots, you think he's dead, and then of course he lives in the end. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I feel like Wes Anderson he's very cruel to dogs in his movies. They always meet their demise in like really sad ways.
There's also like this sort of you could I think could make an argument that they're all within the same universe. Mm-hmm. There's a thing in like because I just watched Royal Tenenbaums again, where two characters head out, ran away from home and head out in a museum. And then you've kind of got the same story happening in Moonrise Kingdom, where two young, underage kids run away.
Right.
So there's a sense that, like this is the Wes Anderson cinematic universe in some way.
I mean, and there's always parent issues. There's always issues with fatherhood in particular, it seems. There's a lot of, I mean, look, he's got his greatest hits and he goes back to them, and and to his detriment and to his, I guess, to praise him as well, he's very good at those things.
There's nobody else who does what he does.
He knows how to pull at the right heartstrings or emotional, pull points. I don't know, what else you get pulled by. But
he kills dogs real good.
He kills dogs so good.
You know one thing I actually really appreciate about his work, because I think there's a sort of childlike quality to everything he does. There's like a sort of a childishness to everything. Characters kind of, the jokes are kind of kid jokes a lot of the time, but his films do get pretty dark, and like you'll have moments of like where suddenly in the Royal Tenenbaums, for example, which is this sort of like delightful fairy tale through New York, suddenly one character will commit, attempt to commit suicide. In the Life Aquatic, a character will die all of a sudden, and it will be a horrific death. And you'll kind of there's a sense that like again he's got this sort of childlike, wondrous worldview, but the films never feel like they're just playing to that one audience. Like even the Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I've just watched with my 2-year-old, is not a film appropriate for 2-year-olds. Like there are moments in that film where I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is like really, in the zone we want to be in for a 2-year-old. But that's what I kind of like about it as well, Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't want to. I agree. I think when I was watching this movie, I hadn't had this experience in a little bit. I was like, I'm watching it. I'm actively being like, this is a good film. I can see the artistry. And then I was just like, I think I'm over it. Which is so weird, but like I would never want him. This is the backhanded compliment beyond all of that. I would never want him to not make his movies. Like, does that make sense? Like, I might start seeing them less, but I like his little place that he has, or big place at this point in the Hollywood system. Because there is nothing like it, even if he does live in this one very specific space of dog herding, daddy issue, locked off shots, pans that stop instantly, like a person guilty pausing for a long period of time and then running away from the camera. Like there's things he does over and over and over again. But like, I don't know, like it comforts me that it's there.
Do you want to see him make the next Star Wars movie?
I think there was a great video where like, what if Wes Anderson made the X-Men movie or something like that?
Right.
Or Wes Anderson made superheroes.
No, I actually, to be honest, I wouldn't want him to do any franchise stuff.
Sure.
It just would kind of, unless there was a weird, like, this is just spitballing just randomly from this question, but like if we were doing a literal like Gwenpool movie and in it she made a reference to being in a Wes Anderson movie and then for like 2 minutes it was a Wes Anderson movie directed by Wes Anderson, like meta stuff, sure. I don't want to see Captain Marvel directed by Wes Anderson. Like I
think it is telling though that he's never done a sequel to any of his films, and he's never done anything other than Fantastic Mr. Fox that was a property that he didn't originate.
Right.
And I think that's kind of interesting. I totally agree with you though about this film. I said at the beginning, I think it's sort of a little bit lesser tier Anderson for me. I put it alongside.
Not full Anderson.
Yeah, not full Anderson. It's more Anderson Cooper than Wes Anderson.
I would argue Anderson Cooper is pretty full Anderson though.
He has got the hair and the glasses.
Yeah.
He's always full Anderson.
He's always full Anderson. I kind of put it alongside, I think, Darjeeling, which is a film, again, I would happily revisit, but it's not one I actively like go out of my way to revisit. Mm-hmm. And I think had interesting moments in it, and there are things in it that I like, because I like Wes Anderson. But I'm not. I didn't go over the moon for this movie like I did for Fantastic Mr. Fox, or even I didn't go over the moon for Moonrise Kingdom, but I liked Moonrise Kingdom a lot more than this. I don't know where you guys got, before we jump into, I think, the biggest elephant in the room on this film. Before we jump into that, I mean, like, where does this kind of land in not only Wes Anderson world, but you know, like, where you think, you know, where your enjoyment for this film was?
The funny thing is like, I would put it probably like, I would put it above some of his other ones. I liked it maybe a little more than you did.
Yeah.
Because I almost feel like I get the sense that if Wes Anderson could make movies in any medium, he would like to do it like this. Like,
Yes.
I feel like this is as close as he can get to like his vision.
Yeah.
And therefore there's something that's a little
In stop motion, you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like some kind of like, you know, insane creative control,
Yeah.
right, that takes years. Like that's probably as close as we can get to like true vision,
Right.
of his.
Yeah.
And for some reason I feel like that somehow translates to like maybe that's one of his better movies.
Right. So he's done 2 stop motion movies and one movie with stop motion in it, and that would be.
But that sounds fucked up to say. That can't be one of his better movies.
Right.
His best movies. But there's something about the stop motion that I found that made me like it more than if it was just like
If it was, yeah, okay.
I think
standard Anderson.
I think it's because we've been conditioned by him to sort of expect and feel a certain thing from him, and this film feels like it would be how his mind actually sees the rest of the world, and he's kind of showed us that through all of his films. But this almost feels like the purest form of full Anderson.
Yeah.
And I liked this is the. Again, I want people to see this movie. I think it has many worthwhile qualities. I just don't think that full Anderson is for me anymore. Like, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
I mean, I think you're right, and that in this respect now, like, we kind of know what we're getting, and we didn't get anything revolutionary or new with this film.
I mean, the newness is the art design and the animation, but then you're lulled into his familiar not even false, his familiar sort of blanket of filmmaking, and you're like, well, this is just the same thing. Even though it looks completely different, it feels the same. Before we get to the elephant in the room, let's keep talking about this elephant, because there's no elephant in this
four-legged
movie.
elephant.
Japanese elephant.
This big non-Japanese elephant.
Stop motion elephant.
But the one thing I didn't like story-wise, I think character-wise, voice acting, all the actors did an amazing job. I think it's super fun. I really was sad that the other dogs didn't, and sorry for the pun, get their day. Every dog outside of Spots and Bryan Cranston's Chief, the other dogs just sort of felt a little bit like a chorus. Like, the only other one that I can name a specific kind of personality trait is Jeff Goldblum's. It's like, oh, did you hear the rumor?
Did you hear the rumor?
And that's it, like, and originally Ed Norton's is kind of like the almost leader, but not really. He's like the put it to a vote guy.
Yeah. Right.
And the other ones are just like mumbly along, like, oh yeah.
It's
like,
Bill Murray and Bob Balaban.
yeah, and they're good, but I wish like there was more to that. Like, I was expecting a bit more of an ensemble sort of thing, and it really wasn't. And I liked the direction it went, but because they gave me all 5 characters in the beginning, I was like, oh.
There's so many characters in this movie.
really is,
There's a lot of story in this movie, so it's kind of hard. I don't know if I agree with you. Like I liked it when Harvey Keitel's dog came on.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
shame on you.
Yeah.
I like that, but there is a lot of narrative happening in this movie.
I don't know if Wes Anderson's going back. I mean, the ensembles get bigger and bigger. Like Grand Budapest had like 100 famous people in it. You know? Like,
Moonrise Kingdom was equally big and encompassing as well. So
and like the pack of dogs that like didn't get their doggy day didn't bother me that much.
No.
Like I kind of saw those like I gave up on trying to differentiate them almost immediately, because I was like, to me they're like the Cub Scouts from Moonrise Kingdom. Like you're not really supposed to know them.
Okay.
And
Yeah. All right.
They're just like a pack.
Yeah.
And like in that moment where you think they all get like killed in like the trash compactor, I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of funny.
That's very on brand, Wes.
I guess they're all dead.
Yeah.
And like when they came back, I was like, oh, okay, they're still alive.
So, elephant in the room, four-legged creature in the room, which is this question about cultural appropriation and the question that surrounds this film. I think we've addressed it already in terms of the way in which this film uses language and deploys language in interesting ways, which at sometimes is inventive, at other times problematic, particularly around Greta Gerwig's character, the foreign exchange student.
Yeah.
And again, I'm still sort of just that question of how does this play in Japan?
Well, it's
and like not even just like how does it play? Will an audience like it? Mechanically, how do you translate this film into Japanese?
not well. I think I said that before. Like it's
It
just,
feels like it needs to have an entirely different cut.
It would.
which omits significant portions of this cut.
well, not even. I don't think it's a specific cut. I think it's a matter of you would get a different viewing experience because you would. The only way to give a Japanese audience the same type of experience is if you dubbed all the Japanese people in English.
Maybe.
Like, that's the only way you would really be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that would just be odd.
Yeah.
I have heard that I think this might have been in like written up in Vulture or something. Like a bunch of Japanese people did watch it in listening to the Japanese to see like what their takeaway was, and they were basically like all the Japanese is accurate, but it's not. It's like,
not the ways people
It's
speak.
simplified, and it's like it's not like floral. So like even if they could hear it, it wouldn't necessarily. It would just be like a super boring conversation style. It's
Right.
not-
I think I actually have that specific quote. It was from a writer at Daily Beast, Karen Hahn, who wrote, whenever there isn't translation available, the Japanese dialogue is shortened and made more context-friendly, and the Japanese characters resort to using anglicized words at strange junctures to get their point across. It's a surface-level tribute to the Japanese language.
Let me ask you this, because now I'm sort of thinking about this. Say they did do what I said, right? Say they dubbed all of the Japanese people in English, and the translator now spoke Japanese, and the dogs all spoke Japanese, and the foreign exchange student spoke Japanese. Is that no longer culturally insensitive? Now, think about it first, because I don't know.
Here's my question. I think this actually opens a broader question that I have about this film, which directly relates to what you're saying.
Okay.
And my broader question is, why is this set in Japan?
Yeah,
Because he likes the look of it.
I think literally that's it.
Because there's
I think-
actually no real reason that this movie is set in Japan.
Yeah,
Because
in
if
fact, there is an Isle of Dogs, and it was in Turkey.
Yeah, it was in Turkey,
Right?
Istanbul, exactly.
Oh my God.
I think Japan, lends itself well to Wes Anderson's sensibilities, his whole like everything in its place, sort of his whole style of doing things, and I think that might be it.
Right. I went to a talk that he gave, and he talked about being influenced by Kurosawa and Miyazaki.
Is it a love letter then?
Here's the thing. I think there are criticisms to this film in terms of cultural appropriation, and I think they're not unwarranted. But I'm sort of curious by that because again, he made a film set entirely in Eastern Europe, like 2 movies ago, and we haven't really the same conversation didn't happen around that. And this is a fictional Japan as well. This is Megasaki, Japan in the future. So I don't think that the conversation around cultural appropriation is unwarranted. I think people have fear to have that conversation. The thing is, though, I think we're again, as I said before, we're in this time and place where people are latching onto that because we're in a time and place where we and it's a good thing, we are much more attuned to the meaning of media.
Sure.
Like we're much more attuned to what does this mean rather than what is it, what is the story. The only problem with it is I think if you really start to unfurl this argument, it kind of comes down to a stay in your lane kind of conversation, which is like, oh, Wes Anderson, you don't really know Japan, so maybe you shouldn't be making movies about Japan. And that's one thing I kind of don't really agree with.
Sure.
Because I think the fact that he's making a movie set in Japan, even if there are flaws to it and faults to it, and maybe doesn't deal with the Japaneseness of it as well as it could, I think that's much more interesting than if this was just an English language film.
Sure. I think, but the thing is, and you keep saying the term of cultural appropriation. I don't think this film was cultural appropriation at all. I just think it's insensitive and it's not thinking about the things that, because appropriation is sort of like taking credit or like moving with the culture and like sort of absorbing it. He's not really doing that, especially because he's treating Japan as the other. That in itself, it is kind of what you said in the beginning, Haas. At best, ignorant, or what was it? At best,
Lazy.
Thank you. That's what it was. And at worst, culturally insensitive. It's almost like all the little pieces of it add up more and more and more. And the elephant, as we were almost sort of got to, I think is and I keep calling her Tracy. I hope it's correct. The Tracy character played by Greta Gerwig, Tracy Walker, is literally like what this movie definitely didn't need if it wanted to not have people talk about this is a white savior character. Totally. From a scripting perspective, you could have totally had the hacker guy who basically did everything anyway, be that character, be Japanese, not have every character outside of the very silent scientist duo be incredibly evil. Like you could very easily turn this tide, and instead what he decides to do is go for his, and this is a trope of his too, this sort of younger woman character that's sort of in a lot of his films. And then what even got me too was like, yeah, we have the white savior. Yes, it's this sort of character that he's done before. But then when there's that scene when she's with her in her foster parents' house or the whatever, and she's going through the checklist of all of the stuff, being a sort of narrative dumping ground there. Then she has this thing, and it's meant to be a cute sort of throwaway thing and whatever. It's in the trailer, but she's like, I think I have a crush on you. She kind of, and again, this is the fucking cis white dude talking about this shit, so I always feel like a dumbass, but I'm like, does she now need to have a romantic, like, why is she all of a sudden crushing on, like, you're taking a character that's already problematic and maybe sprinkling a little more problems on it just because it's that's his lane. Right. He's going full Anderson outside of his lane and trying to build his own little lane in there. And it's just this addition. It's all of these things put together that make it problematic. I feel like if you take one or two of these out or you fix them here or there, like I think it'd be fine even in the societal temperature. It's a lot. It's a lot of it's almost not death by any means, but like insult by paper cut. I don't know. What's tricky too is like I like the look of it. I want him to do things. I like his style, even though I am getting sick of it. I'm very wishy-washy on this. I don't know what it's hard. And I agree with you, Shahir, 100%. I don't want to ever say that people outside of a culture can't make a film about a culture, but when you do that, as it should have been always, but nowadays is the norm, or it should be, you gotta be real careful and measure yourself and think about the very real implications of what you're doing. And I don't think Wes Anderson is measured in his style, and that is it. I don't think and that's fine. Or is it? I don't know. I'm melting down.
Okay, Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you say, there's subtle things, lots of little things that kind of made it, took it from, okay to maybe a little bit not okay. Like, Tracy basically, as soon as she declared her, like she's got a crush on Atari disappeared from the movie. Like he's basically not in the movie anymore after that. Yeah. Like it becomes a Tracy movie, which is weird.
And because she's not even in the main scenario, like she's not even actually part of the central conflict.
Right. Right. And I actually kind of forget what happens to Atari. Like he
eventually marches in.
Oh, he gets a new kidney. Right.
Yeah.
He like kind of goes to the hospital and then like then he's done. So like those kinds of things are a little funny. There's a few other paper cuts that kind of stuck out to me, and maybe like I don't know. I feel like maybe these might be like super subtle.
Yeah.
You want to hear something?
Yeah, of course.
Let's cut this.
No, you can drop that super subtle and be like, no, let's move on.
You know what? Forget it. I gotta go.
I want you to go full Hosmer.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some things, and this is probably the Japanese side of me talking, but that like I found like extremely strange, and like I was surprised that they weren't flagged. So, just to start, in a very broad sense, right? Like if you asked anyone to make a Pinterest board of like Japan, they cover pretty much all of it, right? It's like haikus, taiko drums, bullet trains, cherry blossoms, all that shit. Samurai, that's all in there. Yeah. And that's fine because that's everyone's vision of Japan, essentially.
Yeah.
So that resonates with pretty much everyone. But then there's like a secondary set of things that still kind of resonate, but are actually, I think, pretty disrespectful.
Such as
mushroom clouds in Japan?
Yep.
Can't do it.
Not appropriate.
Like, don't do that. Like, I'm amazed someone wasn't like, let's just not make it a mushroom cloud. Get that one out of there. Yakuza tattoos?
Yep.
They're taboo. It's not like they're banned in Japan, but like a politician doesn't show tattoos. Like, that's super weird.
Right.
There are a couple other ones. Major Domo, I thought was just fucking racist.
Yeah.
Like, why is he so racist?
Yeah.
And then kind of, I mean, maybe this is like going way too deep, but like,
let's do it full Haas.
Internment camps, like,
this was the thing I actually was going to just talk about.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep?
That's pretty much it.
Okay. In that respect, I was actually I thought this was the starting point of this film, which was this idea of dogs being taken to, basically being deported. I thought it was kind of an interesting place to start this film, given where we are politically right now in America. Just to say, but also the history of Japanese internment in America as well. And I thought that was an interesting sort of point to start. And it was kind of like the first time I'd ever felt like Wes Anderson maybe getting a little political and using what he does, to like comment on the world as we see it today, because that is one thing that Wes Anderson typically doesn't do. There is not a lot of like societal relevance to what Wes Anderson does in the real world, in his films.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting point. And then the sort of secondary part to that was that the film actually resolves politically as opposed to from an action, like it doesn't resolve because someone gets something and, saves the day or something like that. It actually resolves oddly politically with basically, and it's an interesting resolution because Kobayashi decides to step down because he acknowledges his own corruption. And then, through sort of a strange couple of degrees of machinations, Atari becomes the new leader, dogs are reinstated. And it's kind of like this odd political conclusion, which I think kind of ties into that opening. I actually did. I was kind of like, but at the heart of that, the thing that's problematic about that, just from a pure watching point of view, is it is kind of anticlimactic. Like when you watch it, there's the movie just kind of like starts barreling towards this end that almost has nothing to do with everything we've just seen.
Yeah.
And it gets like, and I was like, oh, this is really taking a turn, and not a turn that resonates in a way that is meaningful for what we've seen. I definitely wanted to own a dog after seeing the movie. I definitely was like, oh, I love dogs.
I mean, there's enough dogs crying in this movie where you're like, I need to take 4 home.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of teary-eyed dogs.
Yeah, but these dogs are perfect as well, by the way. These dogs are like, like I love it when Edward Norton, the dog, turns around and yells at him and tells him to sit, and he says, no, you're being disobedient.
Yeah.
Like it's just like this thing where like dogs must love their masters. I was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I think that sort of political sensibility to the film was interesting, though not quite fully realized.
Yeah.
And by setting it in Japan kind of did some interesting things as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that it is set in Japan, like, cartoonized it. Like, it made it less consequential,
right?
I think.
I want to go back to saying things I like about it.
Okay.
One, I like how they treat cats. They don't outwardly make cats like the villain or anything like that, but they are the pets of the bad people, but they don't like actively make, like, I was expecting there to be way more, but I'm glad, like, that even beyond
like a nemesis cat.
Yeah, even
like
beyond
a cat beneath Kobayashi.
Like you could easily have that happen, and instead of robot dogs, have it be cat. Like it's just, and I appreciate the restraint both as a cat lover and just from a narrative keeping it clean sort of perspective. Also, Kobayashi. Let's talk about Kobayashi.
Sure.
I really liked, even though he was the villain, I really liked that at these press conferences, no matter what, he would be like, let the other people speak, and it was actually just the will of the people being really dumb and buying into propaganda. He's like, oh, anyone else can speak, and the scientists come up and like be like, actually, we have a cure and there's nothing wrong, and like whatever, and then all the people just like, boo, like it's just like, so like he was a villain, but he was like, I don't know, like I like smart, confident villains, I guess, and that's the most confident thing one can do in an argument, is to be like, anyone who'd like to disagree with me, please come up and tell me why.
Right.
And even though if he's got it sort of covered in the back and he's doing shady deals to do it, but that's a strong villain to me. So I don't know. I just liked that. That was a nice touch. And then even the non-combative, while it did feel like there was a first act, then a second act, then a second act, I feel like I like that he was like, oh my God, I was wrong. And that's going full Anderson.
Yeah.
And then he gives his ward his kidney, which shows the same level of animation, like that top-down thing of care as when they prepared the poison wasabi sushi roll.
Yep.
I don't know. Those are I just thought of two little small things that I liked, even though, because I feel like we have to, I like going back and forth on this movie because
it is a divisive movie in that respect. Yeah.
One thing, another thing that I really like that is like a new to the Wes Anderson cinematic universe is the sort of cell animation for like newsreels and stuff.
Yeah.
It looked so good.
Yeah.
That was so great.
Yeah. That was like a really nice touch that just felt like super, like, I don't know.
It was so smart. And like when there were scenes where like if a character was running at a camera, you'd see on screen they were animated. And then when it smashed, they'd go back to stop motion. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, there was a kind of thing where whenever you were looking at the film, watching a piece of film, they would do a hand-drawn animation, which I thought was kind of rad.
It was so good.
I'm just, like jumping back into the sort of cultural appropriation conversation or cultural insensitivity conversation. I think the thing that's interesting about, just the time we're at again is, thinking about other filmmakers. And this is like usually when I Google lists on Google, it's like I can be really specific and I'll usually find someone who's written a list of this thing.
People that go full Anderson.
Yeah, you could probably find a list for that. But this was one list I couldn't actually find. And I was because the thing that I started thinking about was like other American or other filmmakers that have gone to a foreign country and made a film set entirely in that country. There's not we get many cases of foreign filmmakers coming to America to make movies, such as Bong Joon-ho doing Snowpiercer, Park Chan-wook doing Stoker. This is, again, I'm kind of creating this list right now.
Just make a list.
But I started thinking about, we didn't really have this conversation around Paul Thomas Anderson making Phantom Thread, which is, an American going to London and making arguably a fairly sort of characteristically stiff upper lip British movie, and it's written and directed by an American, and we don't really have that conversation around it. Danny Boyle did Slumdog Millionaire, like a film set in India, where they do the similar sort of translating, between English and Hindi for sort of reasons that are not apparent to the characters. I think my favorite ones are Mel Gibson doing Apocalypto and The Passion of the Christ, where he made a film entirely in Aramaic. I think that's kind of amazing. And Martin Scorsese doing Silence, a couple of years ago. So I think, it's interesting that we're sort of really honing in on Wes Anderson for sort of jumping out of his lane, but it's not an unusual thing.
Well, I would also say, too, out of all those things you've said, if you look at the timeline of when those films were specifically made, as you go down that line, they get sort of more cringy and more cringy and more cringy for me personally around this sort of similar stuff. I do think it's a thing of the times. And I like that it is like this now. Again, people should be able to make whatever they want to make, but they need to understand the thing they're making and understand how that thing will make people feel, and then decide, after really thinking about it long and hard, if decisions that they want to do are worthwhile doing. And I feel like a lot of people, and this is, again, it's more like paper cutty stuff with Wes Anderson here. I don't think he really did it. So I think he tried at certain points to make, consolidations or something, I don't know, just sort of things to make it sort of be better in that regard, but I don't think he did enough. I'm going to roll this into my final thoughts, then we'll do Shahir, then we'll finish it off with Patrick. But for all the shit talk that I'm giving this from that sort of angle of it, I can't also not tell you to not see this movie, because it is, if you love Wes Anderson, you're going to like this movie at least. It's charming, the animation's great, the voice acting is wonderful, the score and the sound design is top notch. It's just, in this day and age, like it is tone deaf in many, many small places. And when you add them up, if you go to this thing and you just sort of, and I hate to even sort of go to this level, but like turn your brain off and go see the emotionally fun dog movie, like you will have a good time. But I feel like a lot of us, and I hope this is also true, you start seeing things like this and you do start questioning stuff, and you read things on the internet, and sometimes those go too far, but at least it's opening up the conversation around it. And hopefully if we have enough of these conversations, we'll get less and less of this paper cutty sort of insensitivity. So I would say see the movie, but also know and realize that there are actual issues with it from both a insensitivity perspective and a filmmaking perspective in that regard. Shahir.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I think, for me, as I've said before, I'm a lifelong fan of Wes Anderson. I don't think this is one of my favorite experiences of seeing a Wes Anderson film. I didn't flip out over it, but I did dig that he was trying for something different that he doesn't normally do. And again, that sort of stay in your lane thing I'm sort of opposed to. So I like that he tried to jump out into this. And I don't think it's an outwardly insensitive movie. I just think inherently there are some things, and it might just be a case of like what Wes Anderson does as a storyteller just doesn't match with how you can accurately portray Japan. It might, that might just be a factor in it. It might just be a case of, not kind of acknowledging these kinds of things. But, that's also a reflection of where we are in our sort of cultural understanding of how languages and how cultures are different happen. So I think if you enjoy Wes Anderson movies, I think this is a film to see. If you want to see a film about like cool dogs walking around and like give you the feels about dogs and that sort of thing, this is another great thing that he does. And he there's a level of sincerity that Wes Anderson can bring to characters that few filmmakers can do. I think what he does with Chief in this film, for example, Chief has a real story arc in this movie that we kind of see from start to finish, and it is work. It actually does land, and I did get an emotional connection from what happens to Chief in this movie. In regards to that question of cultural insensitivity, I don't think it's insensitive. I think it's just problematic, and what's great about it being problematic is that we can have conversations about it now because we as viewers, I think on a whole, are becoming much more attuned to that conversation happening. So I'm straight down the middle of this movie as well. I'm really like 50-50 on this movie.
All right, so you got two 50-50s going at you, Hosmer. Take us out.
Tip the scales.
Yes. Should we police movies that could be deemed offensive? Of course not. Should we censor movies that we find offensive? Of course not. Did I cringe a little bit in this movie? Yes. I also laughed a lot in this movie. Dogs are great. 50-50?
50-50. 50-50 times 3 is 150 by 150 by 3. If we take the math, divide it by pi, go around the radius twice, and maybe spin it around the sun, we come to...
I believe that is the full Anderson equation.
Wow, there you go.
This has been the only podcast about Isle of Dogs. Thank you for listening. I know Shahir, he's pointing at the emails. He's pointing at the screen that we have to do the emails. We're trying something different this week. We're going to read the emails at the end. We know. But I thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
Hosmer, chime in whenever you'd like. We got a lot of emails this week and Twitters. And Twitters. I love Twitters.
Yeah, we like the Twitters.
Hello, fellow young people. Shahir, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I'm going to jump in with Laura, who emailed us in about our Desert Island film. And she just wanted to chime in with her Desert Island film. She said if she was also on the plane, I think if you remember the analogy was we're on a plane, Matt's in first class, I'm in cattle class. She would be in business class. And the film that she wanted to think about, because she has a lot of favorites in lots of different categories. So I started thinking, Laura here, what would I want and need to watch being isolated on an island? Something that can be comforting, fun, but overall, I'd want something that reminds me of humanity and how great people are. So Laura would take Man on Wire.
That's a good choice.
It's an excellent choice. It's a film I actually really, really love, and despite actually only ever seeing it on a plane. And this is what Laura says about this film. Every time I watch that film, I just fall in love with Philippe's passion for what he does, for art, for all the people that have helped him do what he did, simply because he wanted to do it. He's such a great character too, which would provide the entertainment aspect, the sadness, happiness, love, and heartbreak. I think the film got everything that would remind you of what living with humans was like. So that's another great choice. I recommended a film to Laura to check out, a film called Deep Water, which is a similar documentary about a man driven to obsession for trying to do this one thing. Really, really fantastic film. But thanks again for that email, Laura. And Matt, you want to jump over to
I thought I was going to say Deep Blue Sea. I thought I was going to give that to Laura.
A little bit of shark.
Two enthusiastic thumbs up.
Yeah.
This is from Steven on Facebook, also about ye old-fashioned desert island films. I love that everyone is getting in touch with us about this, by the way, because it opens up a really cool discussion. Steven writes, I got a bunch of the one movie answers that are designed to to say more about me than the movie to make me seem more interesting and more intelligent. But since it just took me over 40 seconds to spell check the word intelligent, my Guilty Desert Island movie would be My Cousin Vinny. I just love it and have all the feels for no matter how many times I see it. So there. Also, there's an MCU connection for me there. I don't know.
What is the MCU? Marissa Tomei.
Marissa Tomei is Aunt May.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think that's a good choice too. I also do you guys do this when people are like, oh, what's your favorite movie? Depending on what your audience is, do you shift it or do you be like, well, I got like 3? Like
I used to, and I just completely stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no answer to that question. It's like I can tell you some movies I've watched recently that I like.
I do top 5. That's what I try to do.
Right.
But like back in the day, I remember it was really important to be like, well, I need the arty film and I need the thing and I need the fun film. Like it's very interesting because you do, especially when you talk with people about cinema in circles, you don't want to seem like a chump, but at the same time, it's such a subjective medium.
Yeah. I would make a passionate argument for Hudson Hawk, for example. I would go all in on Hudson Hawk. But it really depends who you're talking to and what you're trying to convince them.
Man, that's a really good one.
I fucking love that movie.
We also we talked to Ross again, who my friend from college we mentioned last week or the week before. His was Iron Giant or Independence Day, but he accepted the Masters of the Universe challenge. Someone who was not growed up with He-Man, who had never seen the film, watching it now. He wrote a big, long email that I really, really liked, but he gave me bullet points, so I'm going to read those for the sake of time because they are excellent. These are his takeaways from a Masters of the Universe virgin.
No He-Man?
No He-Man. No, but just a like for sci-fi movies, for like maybe a possibly cheesy sci-fi movie. He says, what on earth was with the random fourth wall breaking when Tila looks at the camera in the battle and says, Woman at Oz? He says it's sassy, but it's very odd. He says, Bill Conti's score was great. I agree. He says the super New York cop, Lubick, was so weird and awesome. I love that he just retired to Castle Grayskull at the end of the film with some girl he randomly met there. I 100% agree. That's so weird. He-Man's mustached older friend, he calls him Duncan, which is his true name. He is Man-at-Arms is his title. Was great. I loved that he was always hungry. I feel like I've seen that exact guy blow up an X-Wing 20 times. That was my favorite one. Yeah. He also says, is this the OG post-credit scene? Because at the end of this film, Skeletor promises to return. He pops up from the water. He's like, I'll be back. And he doesn't come back. And he wonders if this is a setup for a sequel. It was, Ross, the script for Cyborg is actually the Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle was actually a script for Masters of the Universe 2.
Stop it.
But He-Man fell out of favor, so they reworked it. And if you watch Cyborg with that in mind, it's a little trippy. Oh, and then the final thing, he says, overall, I definitely enjoyed the film and my time with it and would love to see it again someday with friends and a few beers. It seems like it would be much more enjoyable to watch in a group environment with much shouting and merriment. So thank you, Ross, for doing that. And I would suggest to everyone out there to please watch this movie with your friends and make fun of it.
Someone else who did chime in with taking up the challenge, not only watching Master of the Universe, but also watching If for Fake, was Jonathan Blade on Twitter, who said, so far, this is about If for Fake, so far outside of the box that I'm not even sure what happened to the box. If for Fake tries to pull you in with a visual rhythm so that you don't see what is going on its other hand. Definitely a look at what I can do project from Orson Welles. Thank you very much for recommending that one. And then about Master of the Universe, which he also hadn't seen, he said, well, I was wearing an incredulous smile as the credits roll, so that's something, I guess. I guess.
Thanks for that backhanded compliment, Blade.
He said, I get it, though. I'm a ride or die for the first Silent Hill movie, and my certainty of its quality is a hill upon which I'm willing to die.
That's a good movie. That's a good Desert Island movie, too, if you just want a fun horror movie.
We also, there was a little back and forth with myself and somebody else on Twitter about Out of Sight.
Just somebody else.
Well, it's a potential guest that will be coming up on our show later on, so I'll reveal that at some other point. But this person was talking about Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight, which is a movie I absolutely adore, and I hope we can do an entire episode. So good. And this person said, it is the coolest, slickest, smartest, funniest, sexiest movie everywhere. Pure class everywhere. It might be my favorite performance of any actor involved has ever delivered, and I'll be honest, it gets me hot under the collar from the shotgun in the parking lot to the last frame every time.
Oh, no, I really want to know who this guest is.
That person is a writer, and we'll hopefully have them on some point soon.
All right.
And
is that it?
No. There are more emails.
We've done a lot. Let's save them for next week.
Yeah,
Let's save them for
there's more
next week.
emails. We'll save them for next week. Again, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can tweet us at onlymoviepod, or you can email us your thoughts at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your Desert Island films. Let us know some stuff you want us to talk about. Hell, please let us know if you like hearing the emails at the end of the episode instead of the beginning. We're trying something new. Patrick.
Hello.
Hey, buddy.
Hi.
Thanks so much for coming and talking Isle of Dogs.
Thanks for having me.
If people were to want to find your life and works, and I suggest they do, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Patrick Hosmer, Patrick, Hosmer. HeyMr.net, that's my website.
You do these great political cartoons every now and again as well.
Can we talk about Shitty Cabinet for a second?
Yeah. Sure.
Shitty Cabinet. Everyone needs to check it out. That's on your Instagram, or is that on your website?
It's on my Instagram and my website.
Okay. What's your Instagram?
It's at Patrick Hosmer once again. And hashtag Shitty Cabinet. It's not just cabinet members, though. That's the thing. It's a little bit of a misnomer.
It doesn't matter.
It's administration members.
Every time you create one of these things, it turns the frown upside down for me in our current political system. And
these are portraits of President Trump's administration and cabinet members.
And it's hard to describe this obviously in an audio format, but Patrick is a fantastic illustrator. So these are actually really beautifully drawn. Like I could see animated. So I could see like these are so well done. I could imagine buying like a series of these and hanging them on a wall somewhere.
Well.
You have a talent. You have a talent, sir, of cutting to the core of whatever you are actually like in a very sort of, I don't want to call it minimal because I don't think that's what it is, but especially in the Shitty Cabinet thing, I was able to identify like you were so easily portray what makes this an uncomfortable person so magnificently.
It's really all them. They make it easy. They're just terrible, ugly people.
So everyone check that out. Shahir, when you're not marveling at the work of Patrick Hosmer with me, where can folks find you?
You can find me digging through Patrick's trash to see if I can find something I could hang up on my wall at Trash Island, aka ShahirDaud.com, ShahirDaud.com, which has links to my Instagram, Twitter, and all that good stuff. Matt, how about yourself? When you are marveling at the fact that you've just done a big 18-hour marathon of Marvel. What was it? 18, 31? I don't know.
31.
It's coming up soon. What can people? Where can? I don't even know. I'm dumbfounded just even thinking about you watching these things.
When I'm not rewatching the entire MCU, you can find me at MatthewKroll.com. That's MatthewKroll.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram. Just put up a sick Widowmaker play on Overwatch on there, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. Yes, and Shahir, thank you for shouting that out. Me and Shalia Evans of Girl Code fame will be releasing 3 parts leading up to the Road to Infinity War. We're doing a podcast on Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. Shahir, Phase 1 drops this Wednesday.
Okay.
It's 2 hours long.
Oh my God.
Shalia brings so much like just stuff I'd never like think of to the table.
So excited to hear
it's
that.
so fun to talk with her about it, and we're having a really good time doing it. And Shahir, your question, which I'm not going to spoil, was a great backbone for the discussions about trying to take these a little bit further.
I bring the backbone.
You went full backbone.
I'm like the chicken wing of this podcast somewhere.
Those are wing bones. I'm confused. Patrick, thank you again.
Thank you.
And we will see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye.